According to the book The Guardian and the Traitor, the island of Solstheim was created somewhere in the Merithic era, when a dragon priest, who was known in those days as the Guardian, discovered that another dragon priest, then known as the Traitor, was seduced by a dark spirit named Hermamora, and secretly plotted against his dragon-worshipping overlords. He then proceeded to confront him. The two fought against each other for days in the northern regions of Skyrim. The battle was said to be so destructive that a piece of land was torn apart from the mainland of Skyrim, and thus Solstheim was created. Now, Solstheim is unique and special since it is one of the only areas that appears prominently in two full-blown Elder Scrolls single-player games. First during Morrowind DLC, and then as a DLC in Skyrim. This gives us an interesting opportunity to see the same place in two different moments in time, which allows us to notice how things have evolved and changed within the span of 200 years. Now, from a backstory perspective, the differences are already huge. The island 200 years ago, back during Morrowind, was owned by Skyrim, though more specifically owned by the East Empire Company. They had set up shop there to mine ebony. After the Argonian invasion of Morrowind and the subsequent eruption of Red Mountain, much of the Dunmer culture was destroyed and many were left without homes. The High King of Skyrim decided then to give them the island of Solstheim to the Dunmer, so that they could immigrate there and live in peace. This has allowed Solstheim to garner a little bit of a cultural shift, as more and more Dunmer flocking into the island. Now, I have gathered 5 things that I believe you probably don't know about Solstheim and the people that live within it. Things that are intrinsically tied up to Morrowind's DLC. If you played Morrowind back in the day, then you would be surprised to see some of these things connected. And if you didn't, you might learn a few things that you probably didn't know had an explanation. Let's get started. Number 1. Karstaag is a powerful ghost frost giant found in Castle Karstaag ruins. You can summon him by finding his skull in the glacial cave, and dropping it where his remains are on top of his throne. This battle is one of, if not the hardest battle in the game, as the giant is level 90, boasts 4,000 hit points, and can virtually one-shot you with every single melee attack he does. He makes a famous appearance in my video, Who is the Strongest Enemy in Skyrim, which you should definitely watch. Spoiler alert, neither he nor the Emony Warrior are the strongest in the game. Check out the video. In any case, Karstaag is by far the strongest creature in Solstheim, stronger than even the Traitor, also known as MrRhexx. What you might not know is that Karstaag is in fact an Easter egg for those that played Morrowind. See, this guy actually made a very strong appearance in the Blood Moon DLC, which gives us some interesting intel on why he is so cool. His castle was fully built and working, where he had an array of Riekling servants. The layout of the castle and the infrastructure is nothing like Riekling architecture. In fact, if anything, it reeks of conjuration magic, the type of magic a spellcaster would use in order to build himself a fortress. The castle was also protected against intrusion with a very powerful charm spell casted upon it so that nobody could enter without the blessing of Karstaag. This tells us that he was an exceptionally powerful frost giant, as you might have guessed. He, however, was also smart, something you are not bound to see from any of the other giants or frost giants in the game. In fact, the Skull tell you that they had a good relationship of peace with the giant. It's hard to tell where his power came from since there are only 2 options available to us. On one side, he could have simply been a powerful wizard. On the other, it is very much possible that he was blessed by Hircine, the Daedric Lord of Beasts and the Hunt. We know that Hircine really liked Karstaag, probably because he exemplified the power of beasts. Now, the main character in Morrowind actually gets to kill Karstaag, as Hircine summons both to battle to the death in one of his games. Hircine summons 4 of the strongest characters in Solstheim, each from a different group. Falx Carius from the Empire, Tharsten Heartfang from the Skull, then the Reverine from Morrowind, the player character, and the frost giant Karstaag. Basically, Hircine's challenge was, let's bring in the most powerful champions from each group and test them against the most powerful beast of Solstheim. Of course, the player character wins against Karstaag and the beast is killed. This is why you find his skull in the glacial cave all the way out from his castle, since it is here where the battle took place. Back then, though, it was called the Mortrak Glacier. What you also might not know is that in Elder Scrolls lore, as told to us by Elder Scrolls Online, is that a basic principle of necromantic magic is that to control a person or monster that has been killed, all you need is a piece of bone from the creature or from a close relative. With such an object, one could control the skeletal remains of the monster or his ghost, which is virtually what the Dragonborn is doing. By using the bones of Karstaag and by subduing the creature by fighting it, the Dragonborn can now summon him to do his will. Number 2. The Thirsk Mead Hall is a quaint great hall on the banks of Lake Fjalden, a home and hunting lodge to a group of Nord warriors. The ancestors to these Nords used to be Skald hundreds of years ago, but they left the Skald village in order to live like the ancient Nords used to, that is, with a stronger emphasis on hunting and drinking. When you first arrive here, you notice that Rieklings have taken over the place, having fought and kicked out the resident Nords. The Dragonborn then gets a choice on whether he wants to help out the Rieklings by killing the Nords, or help the Nords retake their ancestral home. You might think it a little bit cruel, though, to kill the Nords in order to help the Rieklings, but what you might not know is that suffering from complete genocide is not new to these Nords. A hidden, terrible monster once made its lair deep below the lake. Unknown to the settlers at the time, they built their lodge directly by the lake, disturbing and awakening the creature. It is said that a tragic twist of irony, as the last beam of the Great Hall was nailed in place, the slumbering beast did awaken finally. His ancient name was Udyrfrykte, though the settlers would learn to know his name as Death. The Udyrfrykte came to the newly completed mead hall and wreaked vengeance upon those who had shattered the peace of his long cold sleep. He killed without warning, without mercy, reducing the Thirsk Nords to half their number. It was the valiant sorcerer Eldred Icelight who finally drove the beast back to his lair beneath the frozen lake, and used his magicka to seal the entrance with a great wall of ice. For 100 years, the mead hall withstood all manner of hardship, from bandits to disease, but nothing would then compare to the terror of the Udyrfrykte. He was eventually forgotten by the settlers, but the beast himself did not forget. Eventually, the ice on the lake caught fire, and the entrance to his long-sealed lair lay open, and the Udyrfrykte walked once more upon the land. He found his vengeance upon the mead hall, and killed everyone. Only one person survived the attack, Svenja Snowsong, who would then ask the player character in Morrowind for vengeance of their own. The hero would then find his way deep within the caves below the lake, and slay the mighty creature. Now, according to Norwegian language, the word Udyr translates to beast, and the word Fykt translates to fear. But otherwise, you might actually recognize the name, as there is a troll with a shockingly similar one in Skyrim. During the Dark Brotherhood quest, when you make your way into the Dawnstar Sanctuary, you can find a powerful troll going by the name of Udyrfrykte, an interesting troll because it is in fact a unique model. You can see it has greenish glowing eyes instead of black, and its skin and fur are also unique when compared to other trolls in the game. When you put side by side both creatures, you can see that they have shockingly similar traits, even without mentioning the obvious fact that the names are also basically the same. Now, I know what you're thinking, and unfortunately no. They are probably not the same creature, although maybe a conspiracy video might be fun to do about this. The main character in Morrowind did indeed slay the beast, took its heart out, and used it as a trophy. Now, what you might also not know is that the story doesn't end there. The sole survivor figured that there was only one way to end the terror of this creature upon the world, and as such, she and her new husband ventured far in order to find whoever had spawned this mysterious monster. In Elder Scrolls Oblivion, you can find a hidden place far high in the mountains where you can meet the fabled Udyrfrykte's matron, that is, the mother of the two Udyrfrykte that you can find. When you kill her, you discover the corpse of Svenja Snowsong and her husband who failed to destroy the mighty beast. In the husband's journal, however, we are told that the beast traveled far from Solstheim, somehow crossed the sea from Skyrim, and traveled from Skyrim into the Ural Mountains, which would explain why we can find one of her offspring all the way north in Dawnstar. Since it is told to us that the matron has possibly traveled everywhere on the continent, it makes it very much possible that we may indeed find yet another Udyrfrykte in the next Elder Scrolls game. Seemingly, it has become a little bit of an Easter egg. Number 3. The Rieklings are small, blue-skinned creatures that have sharp teeth and pointy ears. They are very much considered to be ice goblins, and for the most part, they are treated as such. What you might not know is that we actually don't have a single dialogue line in Skyrim that tells us that they are goblins. In fact, they are never referenced as actual goblins during the entirety of the DLC. The people here have always called them Rieklings, and their past is never really referenced. In fact, when you speak to the chieftain, he basically shows that he doesn't even have knowledge that there is more than the island of Solstheim, suggesting that these guys never actually traveled here but have always been here. Now, even though we don't have any dialogue in Skyrim about this, we do have a little bit of it back in Morrowind. In Morrowind, the Skull actually believed them to be Falmer, one of the many possible degenerations that the Snow Elves suffered while under the strict rule of the Dwemer. Now this poses a couple of interesting theories as to how goblins might have actually been created, since we actually do not know where any of them initially came from. We just have theories. Please check out my video on Goblin Secrets for a deeper dive on this topic. In any case, it is not surprising that the Skull would actually believe that. When you take a good look at Elder Scrolls Legends' interpretation of the Falmer, you will notice that the Falmer and goblins are basically the same, suggesting that all goblins might be some form of wrecked version of elves. Or, in the least, it could suggest that the Rieklings, since they look like snow goblins, might actually be Falmer, just simply snow elves that deteriorated up above the snow instead of deep below the ground. Number 4. When you travel around Solstheim, it is very easy to notice the vast differences between the Dunmer settlement of Raven Rock and the more traditional Dunmer settlement of Tel Mithryn. Now, the biggest reason for this is because the ability to magically grow mushrooms like this and use as a house is a magical secret owned by the Telvanni family. So houses like this would be rare to find where this family is not located. But the real interesting part is what you actually get to find inside of the house. When you go in, you're greeted by an interesting levitation device, a set of magical runes inscribed onto the floor that allow you to float your way high into the main floor of the mushroom. You might be inclined to believe that this form of levitation is also a type of secret magic, a kind of construction probably also known to only a certain range of high Dunmer wizards, but the reality is far from that. You might actually not know that this type of magic is actually illegal in the Empire. The reason you don't see people levitating around is because of an old ruling called the Levitation Act, which, just like it sounds, makes it illegal to cast levitation spells. The reason for this ruling is unknown as far as in-game lore is concerned, though as far as meta-knowledge goes, it is probable that the developers of Elder Scrolls didn't want their players to be flying around the world, especially so when you consider that the games already have issues rendering models from very far away, something that would have been a lot worse if players were allowed to fly. Levitation magic, however, is not unlawful in Morrowind, since even though they form part of the Empire, they retained self-rule, which is why you were allowed to cast these kinds of spells back in Elder Scrolls Morrowind. Solstheim back then, though, used to be owned by Skyrim, so technically you wouldn't have been allowed to cast these kinds of spells in there back then. Know, however, that the island is owned now by Morrowind. Neleth is allowed to use these kinds of spells regardless of whatever laws the Empire might have, though he looks like the kind of wizard who wouldn't care anyways about other people's laws, if I can be honest. Number 5. You might find yourself in a landmark location called Brodir Grove, where a group of bandits will be located. The leader of these bandits, typically a Reaver Lord, can be defeated in order to loot his powerful magical sword called Stormfang. Now in Skyrim, there is no lore behind the sword or the location. It is simply a random place with a random group of bandits that yields a random unique powerful weapon. What you might not know is that the place actually has a rich history, and the sword used to be wielded by a powerful cursed adventurer. Information that can of course be found in Morrowind. See, the pillars that you find in this grove are actually the petrified remains of a group of Nords. Nords that were betrayed by a sorcerer that used to travel with them. The lifelong dream of these adventurers was to find the fabled entrance to Sovngarde, the mythical resting place of all the Nordic heroes of old. When their search proved futile, they were betrayed by their sorcerer companion. He killed and cursed the rest of the Nords into becoming statues, all except for one, Ulfgar. Ulfgar went on to kill the betrayer, but not before also being cursed. His fate, however, different from his friends. He was cursed to forever roam the land looking for Sovngarde without ever finding it, cursed to never age. By the time the main character of Morrowind, the Nerevarine, finds him, Ulfgar is already 500 years old, now known as Ulfgar the Unending, his great magical sword called Stormfang. Ulfgar asks the main character to help in finding Sovngarde, which, after reading the book Sovngarde: A Re-Examination, they both discover that the only way to find this legendary place is to die via an honorable death, at which point Ulfgar challenges the main character to a mortal duel. A duel to the death. The main character, of course, wins and defeats Ulfgar, sending him finally to his destiny. Now, it is very likely that the Nerevarine never actually claimed the sword Stormfang, but instead decided to bury it alongside the body in the Grove, a body that the Reaver Lord of Elder Scrolls Skyrim would later rob, which would have given him access to this magical weapon that he now holds. The story does have a nice ending though, as when the Dragonborn makes his way through the main quest and visits Sovngarde, he will actually be able to find Ulfgar the Unending eating and drinking with his old friends and great heroes of old. Feels good, man. I would like to thank Dylan Baker, Toby Oliver, and Alex Fitchy for supporting me on Patreon at the $25 level. You guys are literal gods. I would also like to take the time to thank all of you who are also supporting me on Patreon. It is currently $200 a month, and even though it might seem little to some of you, it is incredibly helpful to me, and it is what allows me to keep on improving and upkeeping the gear that I use to make these videos. I should be having a new microphone by the next video, and it is all thanks to you guys who support me. Thank you so much for helping me out, and have a great weekend.